Imagine being trapped on a cold, lonely island with no way out, surrounded by icy waters and thick fog. This was Alcatraz, the prison that held America's most dangerous men, where tiny stone cells and endless wind left them facing fear and silence every day. Some say the ghosts of the past never left, and the walls still whisper the secrets of every soul who lived on the rock. Step inside, if you dare, and hear what the prison refuses to forget. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe. Hit the like button if you enjoy this journey. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And share this video with someone who loves mysteries. The boat cuts through icy waters. Fog rolls thick across the bay. You can barely see the shore. In the distance, a dark silhouette emerges. Rocks jut sharply from the water. On top of them stands the fortress of Alcatraz. The island is small. Only 22 acres. Yet, it feels immense. The walls rise like cliffs. Wind howls between towers and guardhouses. The lighthouse glows faintly through the mist. Everything about this place whispers isolation. Before it became a prison, Alcatraz had another life. Spanish explorers called it Isla de los Alcatraces. It means Island of the Pelicans. They noticed the seabirds nesting on the cliffs. The island was cold, rocky, and unwelcoming. It offered no warmth, no comfort. In the 1850s, the U.S. Army recognized its value. It was the perfect location for a fort. They built cannons and walls to defend the bay. A lighthouse was added in 1854. And a small military prison followed. Men who broke military law were sent here. By 1934, Alcatraz changed forever. It became a federal maximum security prison. The Department of Justice wanted a place for the worst of the worst. Men who caused trouble in other prisons were brought to the rock. The currents were deadly. Escape seemed impossible. And the walls held secrets that the outside world could never see. As the ferry approaches, you can see it. The main cell house rises above the island. Windows are small, barred, and unwelcoming. Concrete walls are gray and weathered. The structure is cold. It looks designed to hold men apart from the world. Visitors today see ruins. But imagine it in the 1940s and 50s. Guards patrolled the walkways. Inmates lined up for roll call. Every moment was controlled. Every action observed. The bay around the island is treacherous. Icy water slaps the rocks. Currents move unpredictably. Swimming to shore was almost always fatal. Many tried. Few survived. Some never returned at all. The fog adds another layer. It blankets the island. It hides the walls and towers. It muffles sound. The world outside disappears. You are alone. Completely cut off. Alcatraz was designed for isolation. Every detail reinforced it. Cells were tiny. About 10 feet by 4.5 feet. Just enough space for a cot and a small table. Men slept in silence, with little light. Walls were thick and cold. Every sound echoed. The island's wind never stopped. It blew through corridors. It rattled doors. It whispered over rooftops. In winter, it bit at skin and bones. Inside the prison, men felt trapped. Outside, nature was hostile. Solitary confinement was a common punishment. A cell in the hole offered almost no light. Cold stone surrounded inmates on all sides. Days passed slowly. The mind began to wander. Some men lost themselves to despair. Others held on to hope by sheer will. Despite the harshness, life continued on the rock. Inmates worked in the kitchens, laundry, or maintenance. Each day was rigidly scheduled. Meals came at the same time. Roll call never missed. Recreation periods were short. And every action had a purpose. Guards enforced rules strictly. Violations meant punishment. The threat of solitary loomed over everyone. Even small disobedience could lead to hours or days in isolation. It was a place of constant tension. Some of the most notorious criminals walked these halls. Al Capone lived here. George "Machine Gun" Kelly was here. Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz, spent decades in confinement. Their stories are legendary. Yet, in the cells, they were human. Lonely. Fearful. Enduring the same cold, the same wind, the same isolation. The architecture of the prison itself added to the dread. Steel doors clanged behind every movement. Corridors twisted and turned. Windows were high and narrow. You could see outside only a little. The outside world was a blur of gray water and fog. Imagine standing in the recreation yard. The bay stretches around you. Guards watch every step. Men march, run, or perform exercises. The wind cuts through every layer of clothing. Even movement becomes laborious. Even freedom feels distant. Despite these conditions, Alcatraz ran efficiently. Escapes were rare. The rules were strict. The water was cold. The walls were strong. The rock had earned its fearsome reputation. And yet, even in this strict fortress, stories of defiance existed. Some men attempted daring escapes. Some plotted quietly. Some simply endured. Every day was a battle against the place itself. Visiting Alcatraz today, the atmosphere still lingers. Empty cells, rusting bars, wind-whipped rooftops. Even tourists feel the weight of history. The air seems heavier. The silence is louder than any city street. It is here, on this cold, isolated island, that Alcatraz becomes more than a prison. It becomes a symbol. A symbol of confinement. Of human endurance. Of fear and solitude. The walls remember. The wind remembers. And the rock itself seems to hold its secrets close. This was just the beginning. As we move deeper inside, you will see the daily life of inmates, the punishments they faced, and the psychological toll of living in a place designed to break men. The story of Alcatraz is more than walls and cells. It is a story of survival, despair, and the echoes that remain long after the doors close. Every day began the same way. A bell rang through the corridors. Steel doors clanged open. Inmates rose from narrow cots. The cold stone walls pressed in from every side. There was no comfort. No softness. Breakfast was simple. A bowl of oatmeal or thin soup. Bread, sometimes a slice of fruit. The guards watched carefully. Every action was noted. There was no room for mistakes. After breakfast, men were marched to work. Some scrubbed floors. Some cooked in the kitchens. Some repaired the prison itself. Even small tasks were closely monitored. Even small mistakes could bring punishment. The cells were tiny. About 10 feet by 4.5 feet. Just enough space for a cot, a small table, and a toilet. Windows were small. Sunlight barely reached the floor. At night, darkness swallowed the cell. Some men spent hours in solitary confinement. They called it the hole. Concrete walls surrounded them. No light. No conversation. Just cold air and silence. Days stretched endlessly. Minds began to wander. Some lost themselves to despair. Others held on to hope, clinging to memories of life outside. The guards enforced the rules with precision. They patrolled the cell blocks. They watched every move. Disobedience meant punishment. Even talking at the wrong time could lead to hours in isolation. The power of the guards was absolute. Recreation was rare but strictly scheduled. A small yard allowed men to stretch and breathe fresh air. Even then, the bay wind cut through their clothes. Every movement was watched. Even freedom in the yard was controlled. Meals were a time of quiet tension. Men ate quickly. They listened to every sound. A whisper could lead to trouble. Even the clatter of utensils echoed through the corridors. Some of the prisoners were famous. Al Capone. George Machine Gun Kelly. Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz. Their names brought fear outside. Inside, they were just men trapped in small cells. Cold, lonely, facing the same wind and walls as everyone else. Conversations were rare. Trust was dangerous. Friendship could be broken in a moment. Suspicion hung heavy in the air. The silence of the walls became part of daily life. Every sound, every step, seemed amplified. Inmates found small ways to cope. Some read books. Some wrote letters they might never send. Some studied law or crafts. Small routines became lifelines. Even a brief smile or joke could lift spirits for a moment. Punishments varied. Some men were sent to the hole for days at a time. Some lost privileges. Some faced harsh labor. Yet, the strictness created order. It kept control over men who had caused chaos elsewhere. The architecture reinforced confinement. Cell blocks stretched in long, narrow corridors. Doors clanged shut with a finality that never left your ears. Windows were barred. You could see out, but not escape. The walls themselves seemed alive with history and suffering. The mental toll was immense. Many men became withdrawn. Some suffered from depression or anxiety. Others became hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. Isolation and monotony weighed heavily. Even recreation carried risk. Guards watched every movement. Violence could erupt. Arguments were rare, but deadly when they happened. Tension hung in every corner of the prison. Visitors today might walk the halls and see empty cells. They might feel the cold air. The silence presses down. It is easy to imagine what life was like. Men walking the corridors, eyes alert. Every step measured. Every word chosen carefully. Food, work, exercise, sleep. Life became a cycle. Each day felt the same. Monotony was a tool of control. Men were trained to obey. To exist within the walls, not outside them. The guards were part of the environment. Strict, alert, and unyielding. Some were compassionate. Others were harsh. Every guard knew the weight of their authority. Every prisoner knew their place. Alcatraz was not just a prison. It was a machine. A machine designed to shape behavior. To contain danger. to remove the hope of escape. But even here, the human spirit persisted. Some men studied, some read, some made small friends. Every day, they fought against despair in quiet ways. Every day, they survived. The routines reinforced the psychological struggle. No privacy. No freedom. Just walls, wind, and isolation. Yet, even in this controlled environment, stories emerged. Stories of courage, defiance, and resilience. Inmates learned the rhythm of the rock. They measured time by bells and footsteps. By meals and work schedules. By guard rotations and patrols. Every moment was structured. Every moment carried weight. Alcatraz was harsh. It was lonely. It was unrelenting. But it also shaped the men inside. Some grew stronger. Some broke. Some simply endured, day after day. And it is here, in the daily life of prisoners, that the true story begins. Not in violence or escape attempts, but in the quiet endurance of men trapped on a cold, lonely island. The walls remember them. The wind remembers them. And the rock itself holds the weight of their lives. The story of Alcatraz is more than crime or punishment. It is a story of survival in the face of isolation. It is a story of fear, hope, and resilience. And it is only the beginning. Alcatraz was not just a prison. It was a battlefield of willpower. Every day carried tension. Every corridor held the potential for conflict. Fights were rare. But when they happened, they left marks. Guards and inmates knew the rules. Breaking them could bring punishment. Even small arguments could escalate quickly. Some of the most infamous moments happened quietly. Men plotted escapes in secret. They measured the guards' movements. They studied the tides. They memorized every corridor and staircase. One of the most famous events was the Battle of Alcatraz. It happened in 1946. 6 men attempted to escape. They overpowered guards and took weapons. For 2 days, the prison erupted in chaos. Gunfire echoed through the stone corridors. The world watched in disbelief. By the end, 2 inmates were dead. 2 guards had lost their lives. The surviving prisoners were captured and punished severely. But even outside large-scale incidents, tension simmered constantly. Prisoners were under extreme psychological pressure. Isolation and monotony created stress. Men looked for small advantages. Sometimes it was a whispered plan. Sometimes it was a minor defiance. The most famous escape attempt happened in 1962. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. They spent months preparing. They carved the ventilation grates in their cells. They created dummy heads to fool the guards. They fashioned a raft from raincoats. The night of their escape, the bay was calm, but the waters were still deadly. They vanished into the fog. To this day, no one knows if they survived. Some believe the currents claimed them. Others believe they made it to freedom. The mystery keeps Alcatraz alive in public imagination. Violence at Alcatraz was often more psychological than physical. The fear of isolation, the constant surveillance, and the uncertainty of daily life created stress. Even the strongest men felt the pressure. The walls themselves seemed to bear down. The air carried the echoes of past struggles. Prisoners sometimes attacked guards. Guards sometimes retaliated. Yet most men endured quietly. They understood that survival required patience. Every day without incident was a victory. Alcatraz also had strict rules for rebellion. Any disruption could result in time in the hole. Sometimes it meant loss of privileges. Sometimes it meant harsh labor. The prison was designed to contain rebellion before it could spread. And yet, human ingenuity persisted. Men found ways to resist quietly. Small acts of defiance were common. Hiding contraband. Whispering forbidden words. Reading forbidden books. Every small act became a way to assert existence. The architecture contributed to tension. Cell blocks were long and narrow. Doors clanged with each movement. The echo amplified every sound. Even a cough could draw attention. Corridors twisted. Windows were small and high. Outside, the fog hid everything. Inside, every shadow seemed dangerous. The guards knew their power. They could crush rebellion instantly. They could enforce discipline at any moment. Inmates knew it too. Fear of reprisal kept most men in line. But fear also fueled the imagination. Plans for escape or defiance were never far from the mind. The story of escape is one of patience and cunning. Morris and the Anglin brothers were not reckless. They observed, calculated, and acted with precision. The preparation alone took months. They had to carve through concrete. They had to smuggle tools. They had to avoid detection at every turn. Their escape also shows the harsh reality of Alcatraz. It was nearly impossible to survive outside the walls. Even if men reached the water, currents were strong and cold. Sharks and waves added danger. Every element seemed designed to prevent freedom. Violence and rebellion at Alcatraz were not always publicized. Many incidents were minor, yet significant. A shout in the corridor. A locked door jammed. Even small acts required courage. The psychological tension shaped every decision. Inmates constantly calculated risk. Guards constantly watched for threats. Every moment was measured. Every action could change life or death. Alcatraz was more than walls and bars. It was a test of endurance. A proving ground for human resilience. The mental struggle was as real as the physical. Even today, visitors sense the intensity. Walking through empty cell blocks, it is easy to imagine the tension. The echoes of past struggles linger. The silence feels heavy. And yet, the story of Alcatraz is not only about confinement. It is about ingenuity, courage, the drive to survive against impossible odds. Famous escape attempts and rebellions capture attention. But smaller acts of defiance tell a deeper story. The prisoners adapted to the environment. They found ways to maintain their dignity. Even in tiny cells. Even under constant watch. The architecture and design of the prison amplified both fear and strategy. High windows limited vision. Echoing halls increased the psychological pressure. The steel doors signaled authority and permanence. Even the smallest sound could betray a plan. Every successful escape attempt, whether complete or failed, became part of Alcatraz lore. It inspired both fear and fascination. The legend of the rock grew with each story. But the most haunting aspect was not the violence itself. It was the tension between isolation and the desire for freedom. The struggle inside the mind of a man trapped in a cell. The desperate planning. The silent hope. The constant pressure from guards, architecture, and isolation. Even decades later, the stories resonate. They show the human mind under extreme conditions. They reveal courage, patience, and cunning. And they remind us that Alcatraz was more than a prison. It was a crucible. A place where survival required more than strength. It required intelligence, endurance, and a will that refused to break. Even when the prisoners left, Alcatraz did not. The walls remembered. The corridors echoed with past footsteps. The wind carried whispers from cell to cell. The first thing you notice is the silence. It is not empty. It is heavy. It presses against you like water. Every sound is amplified. Every step resonates through stone and steel. The cells are small, gray, and cold. Light filters through tiny windows. The shadows stretch long along the floor. It is easy to imagine a man pacing back and forth. Every movement controlled. Every hour a repetition of the one before. Visitors have reported strange experiences. A sudden chill in a warm room. Footsteps echoing when no one walks nearby. A door creaking open or closed on its own. Some hear whispers, soft, unintelligible. Others simply feel watched. Even guides who know the island well admit to moments of unease. The architecture itself adds to the atmosphere. Corridors twist and turn. Doors clank unexpectedly. Narrow staircases rise steeply. High windows let in little light. Outside, fog wraps around the walls, hiding the bay and sky. The isolation is palpable. It is not just physical. It is psychological. The rock is surrounded by cold water and sharp currents. Escape seems impossible. The mind cannot help but focus on confinement. Alcatraz held many men in solitary confinement. The whole was designed to break spirits. Concrete walls pressed in from every side. No light. No sound. Time became meaningless. Even the strongest minds struggled. The psychological weight of these cells lingered long after release. The prison yard is empty now. Yet the wind carries the memory of footsteps. The clatter of doors. The murmurs of men walking in line. Every shadow seems to shift. Every corner holds potential stories. The island has a strange effect on visitors. Some feel a sense of heaviness in the chest. A creeping awareness that something is just out of sight. Even guides report moments when the air seems to change. A sudden drop in temperature. A whisper carried by the wind. The fog adds to the mystery. It hides the bay. It swallows the buildings. It makes the island seem larger, darker, and more isolated than it really is. In the past, it provided cover for prisoners' work or attempted escapes. Now, it contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Alcatraz's reputation for harshness and isolation contributes to its legends. Famous prisoners walk these halls. The Birdman, Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly. Their presence still seems to linger. The stories of their confinement, their endurance, and their despair echo through the walls. Even without supernatural claims, the place is eerie. Empty cells, narrow corridors, and high barred windows create tension. The mind fills the silence with imagined sounds. Every creak, every draft becomes a reminder of the past. Some claim to have seen apparitions. Figures moving in the shadows. Ghostly shapes at the end of corridors. Faint images in windows. Others report hearing voices, calling from cells long abandoned. Whether true or imagined, the effect is real. The history of suffering, isolation, and despair leaves a psychological imprint. Walking these halls, it is easy to feel the weight of the past. Even in daylight, the place feels cold and distant. The mind remembers the stories. The walls echo the struggles. The wind carries whispers from decades ago. Guides often tell tales of mysterious sounds. Footsteps in empty corridors. Doors rattling without explanation. Cold drafts that appear and vanish. These experiences are never forced. They are subtle. Yet they leave an impression that lasts long after leaving the island. The psychological tension of Alcatraz is heightened by its isolation. Surrounded by water, cut off from the mainland. Fog hides the horizon. Sound is absorbed by stone walls and empty rooms. Even a small noise seems magnified. Even a shadow seems to move of its own accord. The cells themselves tell stories. Marks carved into the walls. Notes scratched into the concrete. Little reminders of those who endured confinement. Even today, the faint traces speak of human presence, struggle, and survival. Visitors often report a sense of being watched. Not by a single person, but by the weight of history. The walls seem alive. Every step is accompanied by the echoes of the past. Alcatraz is a place where imagination and reality blur. The stories of ghostly figures and mysterious sounds intertwine with the very real history of suffering and isolation. It is a combination that keeps the island fascinating, terrifying, and unforgettable. The psychological impact of the rock extends beyond prisoners. Visitors, historians, and even staff have felt moments of unease. The silence, the shadows, the wind, all create a sense of something lingering. A presence that cannot be explained. A reminder of what once was. Even decades after the last prisoner left, the atmosphere persists. The concrete walls hold memory. The corridors echo with repetition. The wind reminds you of isolation. The fog hides secrets that the eye cannot see. Alcatraz's haunting atmosphere is amplified by its location. The surrounding bay is cold and unforgiving. Currents are strong. Waves crash against jagged rocks. It is a natural barrier, one that few could survive. The isolation and danger enhance the eerie presence of the prison. The history, the architecture, and the stories all merge. The place feels alive with memory. Every step, every glance, every sound carries the weight of the past. Even modern visitors feel the tension. Even in daylight, it is easy to sense something watching. Alcatraz teaches a lesson about endurance. Not just physical endurance, but mental. The prisoners who survived daily life faced constant pressure. They adapted, endured, and persevered. The weight of history, however, remains. The island itself becomes a character. The wind whispers. The walls remember. The corridors stretch endlessly. The fog swallows everything outside. For those who visit today, the haunting atmosphere is undeniable. Empty cells, narrow hallways, cold concrete, all serve as reminders. Even without ghosts, the sense of isolation and history is overwhelming. Alcatraz continues to fascinate. It is a symbol of human endurance, despair, and resilience. It is a place where the past is never truly gone. Where silence carries stories. And where every corner, every cell, every shadow speaks of lives once confined. Walking these halls, it is impossible not to feel the weight of the rock. It is impossible not to imagine the footsteps, the whispers, the fear, and the courage. The haunting atmosphere is not just legend. It is real. It is tangible. It is part of the island's soul. And as night falls over the bay, the fog thickens. The wind picks up. The rock stands silent, yet alive. Its history and haunting presence will remain long after you leave. Alcatraz is more than stone and steel. It is memory. It is endurance. It is the echo of lives that will never be forgotten. Alcatraz stands silent today. The gates are empty. The cell blocks are still. The wind moves freely through corridors once filled with footsteps. Yet, the rock is far from lifeless. It carries the weight of every man who ever walked its halls. Every whisper, every fear, every act of endurance lingers in the stone. It is a monument to human struggle, ingenuity, and resilience. The stories of the prisoners continue to fascinate. Al Capone. The Birdman of Alcatraz. The Anglin brothers. Their names are remembered not just for crime, but for survival. For facing a place that sought to erase hope. For defying isolation, monotony, and the relentless watch of guards. Alcatraz's legacy is also a lesson. It teaches about the human mind under pressure. About what happens when isolation becomes constant. About courage, fear, and the thin line between endurance and despair. Even decades after its doors closed, these lessons remain. The island also lives in the imagination. Ghost stories and legends blend with history. Footsteps in empty halls, whispers in the fog, shadows in the windows. All remind us of lives lived under extreme conditions. Even if the tales are debated, the feeling is undeniable. The rock has an atmosphere that no story can fully explain. But beyond the mystery, Alcatraz represents more than confinement. It symbolizes human endurance. It reminds us of what people can endure. And it preserves a history that cannot be forgotten. Every wall, every corridor, every cell holds memory. Memory of fear, of hope, of quiet courage, and of the human spirit. As you reflect on the rock, consider the men who survived its harshness. Their stories are powerful, even when silent. The echoes of their lives teach us about resilience, control, and the boundaries of freedom. Alcatraz was meant to break men. And yet, in some ways, it created legends. Men who endured, who planned, who survived, or whose stories endure even if they did not. Even today, the island invites curiosity. Tourists, historians, and storytellers come to walk its paths. To feel the wind, see the ruins, and sense the weight of history. It remains one of the most iconic symbols of the U.S. prison system. And it remains a place that challenges imagination and understanding. As we leave the rock behind, the fog rolls back across the bay. The sun dips low, casting long shadows on the walls. The island stands alone, a sentinel of past lives. Silent, cold, yet alive with memory. If you felt the tension, the history, and the haunting power of Alcatraz today, don't let the story end here. Subscribe to the channel to follow more journeys into history's most mysterious places. Hit the like button if this story captivated you. Turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the unseen and the unknown. And share this video with someone who loves mysteries, history, or the dark tales of human endurance. The rock may stand silent, but the stories within it will never fade. Alcatraz continues to teach, to haunt, and to remind us of what it means to survive against impossible odds. And as long as we remember, its legacy lives on.